dependencies what we have added.
Lost the phone.
Web starter I have added, Lombok I have added, DevTools I have added. Web starter is used to develop the REST API by using Spring WebMVC component, and Lombok annotation to generate the setters getters for the variables available in our binding classes. And the next one, DevTools. Whenever we modify some code in our project, to restart the server we are using DevTools dependency. Okay, web starter I have taken, Spring Boot starter web dependency, then DevTools dependency we have taken, Lombok dependency we have taken. Web starter already we know. To develop a web application we are going to use this web starter. And to restart the server we are going to use this DevTools. To generate the setters getters for the variables we are going to use this Lombok dependency. Now in order to represent the data, first I need to create one binding class. I'm going to take one class with a name called book. This is my binding class. This is my binding class. This is used for response. Now I'm using book class for the response that I'm keeping inside the response package. I am using that class for the response purpose. I'm going to use that class for the response purpose. Public class book. Let me take variables. Private. Let's take the wrapper classes recommended. Book ID. Private integer book ID. Private string book name. Private double book price. Private double book price. I don't want to generate
Recording in progress.
That's for our variable, that is by using project Lombok. Project Lombok annotation at the rate data I'm using for this class. Okay, at the rate data Lombok. I want to generate the constructor also to initialize the variables. So I'm writing, first I'm writing no args constructor, then I'm writing all args constructor. No args constructor and all args constructor I am writing for this variables. At the rate data, which is used to generate the setters getters for these variables. No args constructor, that means a zero param constructor I want to generate for the book class. All args constructor, I want to generate a constructor by taking all these variables as the parameters for the constructor. Very good. Now let us create one REST controller, new class REST controller. I'm creating a REST controller with a name called book REST controller. I'm creating a class with a name called book REST controller. How to represent this class as a REST controller? At the rate REST controller. At the rate REST controller is the annotation I'm taking. Inside this annotation, I'm taking one method. I'm taking one method, public response entity, and I'm specifying book type. I want to return the book object. Get book. Okay, very simple. Now simply I'm creating object for book class. I'm hard coding the response, guys. Later we will see how to get the data from the database also. Currently we are understanding the concept. Once we are clear with the concept, then we will interact with the database also. Book is equal to new book. I'm going to use parameterized constructor to initialize the data to that object. Spring book price 400 I'm going to take as a book price. Okay, now we need to return response entity. So return new response entity of what is the data book object. Okay, http status dot okay. Now tell me what is the return type of this method now. Can you guys tell me what is the return type of this method now? What is the return type of this method? Response entity. Okay, now let's specify at the rate get mapping slash book. @get mapping slash book. Are you guys able to follow me? I have created one simple REST controller which is called book REST controller. I have created simple class with a name called book REST controller. In the book REST controller, I have created one class.
Recording in progress.
Inside this, currently I am hard coding the data. I am creating the book object using parameterized constructor and I am passing the values. This is why I am using parameterized constructor to initialize the variables. Then I am returning that book object as a response entity. By using response entity, I am returning the book object as a body, status code OK. I am sending. Good. Now go to resources, change the port number. Server.port is equal to 9090. Server.port is equal to 9090. Now guys tell me, when I send a get request, what is the response I'm going to get now? If I send a request from the postman, am I going to get the book object as a response, or I'm going to get the XML data, or I'm going to get the Json data? Can you tell me what would be the response that I'm going to get? What I am returning from my method? Book object. What I am returning from my method? I'm returning book object. Okay, can we try this? Can we send a request and can we try? Send a request and can we try? Look at this, what I have done. I have taken one. First I have created one project. Inside that project, what I have done, I have taken dependencies. What dependencies? Web starter I have taken, dev tools I have taken, Lombok I have taken. Web starter, dev tools and Lombok. Test is coming by default. Then I have taken one simple class called book. In that I am taking 3 variables and I am using project Lombok to generate the setters, getters, zero param constructor, all args constructor. Then I have written one REST controller. Inside this REST controller, I have one method which is binded to get request with a URL pattern called /book. That means when anybody send a get request with /book as a URL pattern, this method will be executed and it is returning book object with the status code as OK. Now tell me, from the REST API, we should return the object to the client or we should return the interoperable data to the client? When client send a request, my REST API will return the object. Should I return an object from the REST API or we should not return object from the REST APIs? We should not return objects from the REST APIs. Always we need to return interoperable data. What is that interoperable data? Either XML or JSON. But tell me here, am I specifying that I am returning XML data or I am returning JSON data? Am I using any JAXB API? Am I using any Jackson API here? In my program, am I using any JAXB API or am I using any Jackson API in my program? Not available. Nothing is there. Just I am creating one object. I am giving the object to response entity and I am returning that object. Okay. Now let's run this application and try this, guys. Run as boot application. Okay. Application is running on the port number 9090. Let's go to Postman software. Which is used to test the REST APIs, which is industry standard. People in the industry will use Postman to test REST APIs functionality. Now my Postman is opening. Okay. We need to send HTTP GET request to our REST API and see the behavior, how the response it is giving to us. Localhost :9090/book. Guys, observe, am I sending any data to the REST API or I'm sending a simple one HTTP GET request to the REST API? I'm sending any information information in the request, or I'm sending a just blank request, empty request, empty request. I'm not sending any data. Just I'm sending HTTP GET request to the URL. Okay, observe. Click on send. Oh, am I getting the object or I'm getting the JSON data? It's magic, guys. It's magic. What is the response I'm getting from the REST API? Am I getting object or I'm getting JSON? I'm getting JSON. Here, if you see, we know Json API, object mapper class, which is used to convert the Java object into JSON. Am I writing that logic? Am I writing that logic? I am not writing that logic. I am not writing that logic. Then who is executing that logic now? Who is executing that logic now? Spring Boot. Why Spring Boot is executing that logic to convert the Java object into JSON? Can anybody tell me? To convert my book object into book JSON. The reason is converting the Java object to JSON is not only my requirement, that is a universal requirement. Only my application should convert the Java object to JSON, or every Spring Boot REST API should convert the Java object to JSON. Is it only our project require?
Recording in progress.
Universal requirement. If it is a universal requirement, why everybody should write that Json API logic here? That's why Spring Boot is providing the Json logic for us internally. You no need to write that JAXP logic or Json logic in the Spring Boot. Internally, Spring Boot will take care of converting the Java object into XML, XML to Java object. Spring Boot will take care of converting JSON data to Java object and Java object to JSON data. You no need to write that logic. That will be taken care by Spring Boot. Then you can ask me a question. Ashok, when the Spring Boot is taking care of that, why you spend 1 week of time to explain JAXP API, Json API? Did I wasted your time by explaining JAXP, Json? Whatever we have left in the JAXP, Json, are we going to use those things in the Spring Boot, or Spring Boot will use those things internally? Come on guys, it's time to talk about the internals. As a programmer, do you need to use the Json, JAXP directly, or Spring Boot will take care of it? Spring Boot will take care of it. Why? Using JAXP, using Json is not only my requirement. Those are universal requirements. When they are universal requirement, why everybody should write that logic in the program? Spring Boot will take care of it. Sir, if it is Spring Boot is taking care of that Json and JAXP, why you wasted our time? Why you have taken 1 week of time to explain JAXP, Json, XML, JSON? Did I wasted your time? Or I have explained the prerequisites to understand the internals? Now do you know how this book object will be converting to this JSON data? Do you know internally how the logic is executing by the Spring Boot? To teach you these internals, I have explained JAXP API, Json API programs for you. But actually, you no need to work with those APIs manually. Actually, you no need to work with those APIs manually in the Spring Boot. Spring Boot will take care of them. Now, do you have a question? Ashok, you are returning a book object, but in the postman you are seeing the JSON. क्या हो रहा है बीच में? Who is taking care of that conversion? Who is converting that book object into JSON data? My method is returning book object, but in the postman when I send a request to the REST API, I am seeing JSON response. कुछ तो हो रहा है बीच में. Method is returning object, postman is displaying JSON. What is happening in the middle? That's where Json API is executing internally by the Spring Boot to convert this Java object into JSON format and sending the JSON to the client. Why? To achieve interoperability. Suppose for example, if the Spring Boot is not converting the object to JSON and if it is directly returning the object, what is the problem? interoperability. My REST API is developed by using Java. If I return a Java object, this Python client can understand the Java object, or Python client cannot understand the Java object. Python client cannot understand the Java object. If my REST API returning a Java object, this .NET client will understand the Java object. .NET client will not understand the Java object. .NET client will not understand the Java object. That is the reason what my REST API is doing. Even though we are returning the object from the method, that object is converted to JSON data. That JSON data came as a response to the client. Can I say my REST API is interoperable now? Is it giving the response to the client in the interoperable format, or it is giving the data in the object format? My REST API is giving the data in the interoperable format. Samjha? Guys, are you with me?
Hey.
Are you able to follow?
Hey.
Method is returning object, but response coming as JSON. What is happening in the middle? Why Spring Boot is converting that object to JSON?
Hey.
Spring Boot is intelligent. Spring Boot is intelligent than us. Whenever you develop a REST API, whenever you are returning a object, Spring Boot understand that. But yeah, if you give this object, clients cannot understand your object. Let me convert this object into client understandable format and let me send the response to the client. That's why our Spring Boot is a big brother for us. It is helping us. You no need to write the logic to convert the object to JSON. Spring Boot will take care of that conversion. You are writing a object. Spring Boot is converting that object into JSON data and sending that JSON as a response to the client. Now, if the client is .NET application, they can understand the JSON. If a client is Python application, they can understand the JSON. If a client is some Salesforce application, they can understand the JSON. Now, my REST API is interoperable, or my REST API is not interoperable now? Boss, tell me, my REST API is interoperable or my REST API is not interoperable? My REST API is interoperable. Okay, but there is one small problem. Always what response is coming now? Always what response is coming now? Only JSON is coming. That is the default behavior of the REST API. Whenever you return any object from the REST API method, by default that object will be converted to JSON. JSON data will be sent to the client. That is the default behavior of the REST API. Are you guys getting my point, guys? How the JSON data is coming as a response now? Are you guys getting my point? Why the JSON data is coming as a response? That is the default nature of the Spring Boot REST APIs. That is the default nature of the Spring Boot REST APIs. Okay, I'm giving this simple example. If anybody not able to understand this example, please let me know, guys. If anybody not able to understand this, please let me know. All of you able to understand the program? Anything difficult to understand? Simple, बहुत easy है भाई, बहुत आसान है. ठीक है? When we send the request to the above REST controller, it will return book data in. It will give the data in the JSON format. When we send HTTP GET request to above REST controller, then it will provide response in JSON format like below. Okay, it is going to give you this JSON response. It is going to give you this JSON response. This is JSON response in the JSON format. Now you have a question. Method is returning object. Method is returning object. REST controller method. REST controller method returning object. But response came as JSON. How it is happening? REST controller method returning object, but response came as JSON in post. happening. Okay, when we return any object from the REST controller method, by default Spring Boot will convert that object into JSON format and will give that JSON as a response. When REST controller method returning object, then Spring Boot will convert that object into JSON format using Json API, and it will return that JSON as response. This is default behavior. This is default behavior of Spring Boot. Converting Java object to JSON is not only our project requirement, that is universal requirement. Hence, conversion is taken care by Spring Boot to reduce burden on the programmers. If Spring Boot is not doing that, then every programmer should write that logic to convert. Yes or no? Suppose, for example, if Spring Boot is not doing, then what you need to do? If Spring Boot is not doing this conversion, then what you need to do, man? You need to convert manually or not? Okay, manually you will write the logic to convert to JSON. Suppose some client want XML, then क्या करेगा? If some clients want XML, then what you will do? If some client wants XML, then what we need to do? Then we should write the JAXB logic also to convert it. Okay. That is the reason Spring Boot is taking care of that conversion. That's good. Guys, observe carefully. I have taken one binding class which is representing the response data. Now I am taking one REST controller. Inside the REST controller I am writing one method. That method is having a get request and it is returning the object. Somebody is saying, why you have taken generic type? Response entity purpose is what, guys? Response entity purpose is what? To construct the response. What we should keep in the response? Body data, status code. Okay, new response, that means I am telling that response entity of book, that means the response entity class should contain book object as a first parameter. That is the reason I am using this object as a generic type. Good. Now I am creating book object with parameter constructor to initialize the data. If I create with 0 param constructor, then I have to set the data by calling setter method. Instead of writing the 3 lines of code, I am writing single line to initialize the data. In the single line, by writing a constructor. Return new response entity book comma http status dot OK. Book is the body and status is OK. Success. Right. Now, when I send that request to this REST API, it is giving the data in the JSON format. But how? So many people will get confused here. Sir, our method is returning object, but response is coming as a JSON. Kaise ho raha hai? How it is happening? Can anybody explain this concept for me? Ajay Kumar, can you unmute your mic? Ajay Kumar, can you unmute your mic? Bhaiya, Ajay Kumar. Yoga Priya, can you unmute your mic? Yoga Priya.
Hello.
Yeah, hi Yoga Priya. How are you?
Hi, fine. The default behavior of this.
Let me ask you a question. What is the return type of my REST controller method? What is the return type of my REST controller method?
Response entity.
response entity. What that response entity contains?
Give the structure of the response.
Right. Now, so whenever we send request, what response we are getting?
It's normal message response. Previously we checked
In which format I'm getting the response?
it's string or message. Text
We are
response.
getting the response in the JSON format. Okay. Now, method, as a programmer, I am returning the object from the my method. But when client send a request, client is getting JSON data. Why that JSON is coming? How the JSON is coming?
It's by default string method string root is written. It's returning that kind of structure.
Okay. So why that Spring Boot is converting that? Why, as a programmer, why I am not doing that? Why Spring Boot is doing that?
We are instructing. Sorry, we write code for that. So it's returning like that.
Because that is universal requirement. If I write the logic now, we can write the logic to convert the object into JSON and we can return the JSON. That's not a problem. But what is the problem? That method always will return only JSON data. If somebody wants the XML, will my logic support for that XML or my logic will not support for the XML? My logic will not support for the XML. That's the reason in the REST API, we don't use the JAXB or Jackson APIs directly. Here, I can write the logic of Jackson. I can return the JSON data. But what is the problem in future? Some client want XML. My method will not support for that. That is the reason, as a programmer, we don't write the logic to convert that into XML or JSON. Spring Boot will take care of it. That is the internal implementation of the Spring Boot. Okay. Now, when I'm sending the request, what is the response we are getting? Always it is getting in the form of which format? JSON format. But what is my requirement here? For one client, we should give XML. For another client, we should give in the JSON. Okay. Here, we need to do small change in our code, guys. If we want to support multiple formats of the data, we need to change. We need to make a small change in our code. Right. Observe carefully. What is the change that I am going to do? Right. Get mapping value is equal to URL pattern I am giving as a value. Then I am writing one attribute called produces. I am writing one attribute called produces. Media type, see here, Spring Framework HTTP media type dot application underscore XML, comma, media type dot application underscore JSON. What is the meaning of that? For get mapping, I am giving value is equal to /book and produces is equal to, I am specifying some formats. I want to produce the data in multiple formats from this REST API. One is the XML format, another one is the JSON format. If you want to support multiple formats of the data from the REST API, then we need to specify produces as an annotation. Cannot convert produces XML value comma produces. It should be media type org Spring Framework media type dot application /XML comma media type application /JSON. What it is holding? Media type XML value JSON value. Okay. Instead of that, we can specify like this also. XML value and JSON value. Okay. Now that means I'm specifying that produces represents in which format your REST API method can produce the response to the client. Okay? If I don't specify this produces, there is no problem. By default XML only. Sorry, by default only JSON. But I want to support for multiple formats of the response. Because some clients are interested for XML response, some clients are interested for JSON response. How can we support for multiple formats of the response? By using produces. That means I'm telling this REST API method can produce the response in the XML and in the JSON. Now it is a client choice. Clients can choose XML as a response. Clients can choose JSON as a response. Okay. When you want to convert the XML, when you want to support for XML, normal Java class is support for XML, or we need to make it as a binding class. We need to make it as a binding class. How to make it as a binding class? By using XML root element. If you don't want to support for XML, then remove that annotation. It is not required. Remove that. Suppose if you want to support for multiple formats of the data, both XML and JSON, first you need to make your class as a binding class. How to make your class as a binding class? By using XML root element. Then you need to specify produces. That means my method can produce the response in the XML and my method can produce the response in the JSON also. My method can produce the response in the XML, my method can produce the response in the JSON also. Are you guys able to follow this? Are you guys able to follow this? Come on. Come on guys. Are you guys able to follow? Why I am writing produces attribute and why I am using XML root element? Because earlier when I am not writing the produces, my API was supporting for only JSON. Now my requirement is my API should support for XML data as well as JSON data. First of all, to support for XML data, our class should be binding class. To represent our class as a binding class, I am using XML root element. Okay. Now, so to represent that my method can support for multiple formats of the data, I am using produces, XML and JSON. Are you guys comfortable with this? What is the purpose of produces and attribute in the get mapping? What is the purpose of produces in the get mapping? Can anyone reply? What is the purpose of produces? Not Excel sheet, man. XML. Someone is saying that Excel sheet. Do you have brain or not? Where is Excel sheet here? XML. XML, Excel, both are not same. It is used to convert the data into XML format and JSON format. To support multiple formats of the response, we are using produces attribute. In this produces, we are specifying which formats it is supporting. Suppose for example, if I don't specify produces, then tell me which format it will support. Only JSON. Now I want to support for multiple formats. Produces. Okay. Good. Good. Fine. Now let's run our application. Let's run our application. How many formats my REST API will support now? How many formats my REST API will support now? 2 formats. One is XML, another one is JSON. Let's run our application. Run as boot app. Boot app. Application started by ya. Hello, let's access. Send the request. Okay. Now in which format the response is coming by default? When I added the produces and XML root element, in which format the response is coming by default? XML format. When I send the request by default, which format is coming now? XML. Tell me, do I have any logic to convert the Java object to XML in this method, or it is converting by Spring Boot? Who is converting that? Spring Boot. Do you know how the Java object will be converted to XML? How the Java object will be converted to JSON? Do you know how the Java object will be converted to XML? How the Java object will be converted to JSON? Already we learned those APIs. Exactly. TK. Fine. Now there is a problem, guys. There is a problem. Whenever I send a request from the postman, what response I'm getting? XML. XML response only I'm getting by default. But now I want JSON. I want JSON. How can I get the JSON from the REST API now? Is it giving me the JSON or it is giving me only XML now by default? By default it is giving the XML. How can I get the JSON now? Can you tell me? How can I get the JSON now? Do I need to change the POSO annotation? If I remove the POSO annotation, then what will happen? JSON will come. But in the real time, can you remove this annotation? Everybody want only JSON. Somebody want XML, somebody want JSON. Then how to handle that scenario? Somebody want JSON, somebody want XML. How to handle that scenario? That's where we need to tell to the REST API, I want JSON or I want XML. We need to give some, client should give some input to the REST API. Hey REST API, I'm sending a request, give me XML data. First client should tell to the REST API, give me XML data. Second client should tell to REST API, give me JSON data. Simple example, man. Sunday is coming. You want non-veg. You need to tell to your mother to prepare the non-veg or they will prepare by default. Or you want to eat some special items, you want special dish today for dinner. You want to eat a special dish for the today's dinner. You need to inform to your mother or she will guess it automatically. You need to inform to your mother or she will guess automatically. बीबी का बात छोड़ो भाई, I'm talking about mother. बीबी को हम प्रिपेयर करके देना पड़ता है. You want a special dish, how your mother can guess it, man? We need to inform to her or not? Regularly, she will prepare dal makhni, rajma, right? But today, you want fish fry in the dinner. Today you want fish fry in the dinner. How your mother will understand that you know fish fry for dinner today? You need to tell to her or not? बताओ भाई. You need to tell to your mother, Mommy, I want fish fry today. If you tell her, then by hook or crook, she will prepare the fish fry for your dinner. Okay. Tomorrow breakfast you want poha. Tomorrow breakfast you want poha in your tomorrow breakfast. You need to inform to your mother about that you are expecting poha in the breakfast. That means you need to inform to her what you want to eat. Then only she will prepare. Poha is boring, huh? Idli dosa you want, huh? Egg dosa. Okay. You want to eat egg dosa for tomorrow breakfast. You need to inform to your mother, Mummy, today evening I want fish fry in dinner. Tomorrow morning I want egg dosa in breakfast. Tomorrow afternoon I want chicken biryani. So you need to tell to her what you are expecting. If you are doing job, then she will accept all your orders and she will prepare. Suppose if you don't have job, क्या होगा? घुमा के थप्पड़ मारता है. you are doing the job, then they will accept your orders. If you are not doing the job, if you are keep on doing the courses, घुमा के थप्पड़ मारते, पहले जॉब आने दो, बाद में ऑर्डर दे सकते हैं. If you don't have a job, whatever they cook, you have to eat. Otherwise, no option. Okay, so that is the reason, concentrate on the classes and get the job early. Then you can enjoy your life. Okay, bhaiya. If you don't have a job, nobody will respect you. If you don't have a income, if you don't have earning power, nobody will respect you. You should have earning power. Good. Fine. So here, simple example that I'm taking. If you want to eat a special dish in your dinner or in the breakfast, we need to tell to our mother. Then she will prepare and she will give. Okay. Similarly here, I want Json as a response. I want Json as a response. If I think in my mind, server will give me Json, or I need to tell to server. Here, our mother is equal to server. Right? Now, if you tell to your mother you want a fish fry, then only she will prepare, she will give you. Here, we need a JSON response from the server, or we need XML response from the server. So, server will guess what we need, or we need to tell to server what we need. Server can guess our expectation, or we need to tell to server. We need to tell to server. That's where we are going to tell to server by using one header called accept header. Okay, bhai? Accept. Accept is equal to application slash JSON. I'm sending one header in the request. What is the header? Accept. Accept is equal to application slash JSON. Hey server, give me JSON data as a response. I will accept JSON data as a response. That is what I am telling to server. Now what I am getting as a response? Am I getting JSON as a response? Suppose I want XML as a response. How can I tell to server that I want XML as a response? Application slash XML. Application slash XML send. Am I getting XML as a response? I want JSON. Application slash JSON. Click on send. I'm getting JSON. I want XML. Application slash XML. Send that. Now do you understand how to tell to server that you want a particular response data, particular format for the response data? Accept a header. Accept a header will be sent by the client in the request to tell to server in which format we are expecting the response from the server. Are you guys able to follow me? What is the purpose of the accept? Are you guys able to follow me? What is the purpose of accept? Accept. Who will send the accept header? Who will send the accept header? Client will send the accept header to the server to tell in which format client expecting response. Good. Fine. Now, if we want to support for multiple formats of the data, then we need to go for producers. First of all, tell me what is the purpose of producers? Producers will represent which formats our REST API supports for response. Producers represents which formats? Producers represents supporting response formats by REST API method. Producers attribute represents supporting response formats by REST API method. Okay? When client wants to get the response in the specific format, client should send that information by using accept header in the request. Above REST API method support for XML data and JSON data as a response. When client wants specific response format, then client should send that information by using accept header. When client wants when client wants specific response format, then client should send accept header in request. When client wants specific response format, then client should send accept header in request like this. Accept is equal to application/XML. Accept is equal to or application/JSON. Accept is equal to application/JSON. Okay, based on the accept header value, REST API will provide response to client. Based on accept header value, REST API will provide response to the client. Now, take this. This is my REST API method. This is client 1 and this is client 2. Client 1 is available and client 2 is available. Client 1 is available and client 2 is available. How client 1 tell that I want XML as a response? How client 1 can get XML as a response? Accept is equal to application/XML. Okay, then server will provide the XML response to the client. How client 2 can get JSON response? How client 2 can get the JSON response, guys? What client 2 should send in the accept header? Accept is equal to app/JSON. That means application/JSON. Now do you understand how clients can get XML response and JSON response from the REST APIs? Do you understand how clients can get XML response and JSON response from the REST APIs? Okay, this is HTTP request with the header. Come on, guys. Come on. So my REST API method is having a produces. Produces represents that in which formats you want to support for the response. I want to support for XML data as a response and I want to support for JSON data also as a response. I want to be interoperable because some clients want XML data, some clients want the JSON data. So to support for multiple formats of the data, I'm using produces. Produces represents XML data and produces represents JSON data. That means clients can get XML as a response from my method, clients can get JSON also as a response from my method. Okay. Now here, how clients can get the response in whichever the format they want? By using accept header in the request. When a client is sending a request, client should send a